In the vast, interconnected digital nervous system of the 21st century, where news cycles are measured in minutes and public attention is the world's most coveted currency, a singular shockwave momentarily paralyzed the network before triggering a system-wide cascade of outrage, analysis, and ideological combat. The catalyst was not a groundbreaking legal ruling, a geopolitical crisis, or a corporate scandal, but a casually delivered sentence from a man who has mastered the art of weaponizing public discourse, former President Donald J. Trump. The context was the recently concluded, deeply polarizing sentencing of Sean Diddy Combs, a saga that had seemingly reached its final, somber chapter in a federal courtroom. Yet, in an interview setting, Trump leaned into the frame, his demeanor a studied performance of off-the-cuff candor fused with tactical provocation, and delivered a verdict that bypassed the judiciary entirely, issuing directly from the court of political spectacle. "You know," he stated, with an air of indisputable finality that belied the complexity of the case, "I think Diddy got a lot of leniency. It actually turned out quite well for him." This statement did not simply enter the public conversation, it detonated within it. The sentence, just 15 words long, functioned as a rhetorical singularity, warping the gravity of the entire narrative around it. It was a pronouncement that instantly refracted the story of Diddy's fall through the fractured lens of American politics. For his ardent supporters, it was classic Trump, a disruptive truth-teller fearlessly pointing out the perceived hypocrisies of a rigged system. For his fervent opponents, it was a grotesque affirmation of elite privilege, a moment where one powerful man appeared to offer a subtle, knowing nod to the cushioned landing of another. The digital ecosystem, that perpetual motion machine of hot takes and partisan fury, experienced a nanosecond of stunned silence. A collective drawing of breath, before erupting into a supernova of memes, condemnations, and fervent endorsements. The story was no longer confined to the legal and entertainment sections, it was instantly promoted to the front page of a national conversation about justice, accountability, and the unspoken covenant among the ultra-powerful. Hey everyone, and a special welcome to my viewers across the USA. This is The Killer Next Door, the channel where we investigate the dark intersections of power, fame, and crime, proving that the most shocking truths are often hidden behind the masks of respectability and influence. Before we dissect this explosive moment where the worlds of high-stakes politics and pop culture corruption violently collided, I want to know who's watching right now. This story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about our society, and your perspective is a vital part of this investigation. So, if you're watching from the States, drop a comment right now and tell me your name and your city. I read every single one, and I'll be giving a shout out to some of you in our next video. Let's build a map of this conversation happening all across the country. Now, if you thought the final gavel in the Diddy case meant the story was over, you underestimated the power of a single, strategically deployed sentence from a former president. What followed was a masterclass in media manipulation and a chilling, unfiltered glimpse into how the elite perceive the concept of justice itself. The strategic timing of Trump's comment was either a product of serendipitous chaos or a calculated stroke of political jujitsu. The body politic was still metabolizing the complex, morally ambiguous aftermath of Diddy's sentencing, an outcome that some celebrated as a long-overdue reckoning, while others decried as a mere slap on the wrist, a testament to the insulating force field of immense wealth. The emotional wound was fresh, the societal debate raw and unresolved. Into this volatile and oxygen-rich environment, Trump introduced a lit match. Critically, his tone was not one of moral condemnation or sober reflection on the nature of crime and punishment. Instead, it was almost congratulatory, carrying a potent subtext that seemed to whisper to a certain segment of the population, "This is the game, and he played it well." For the millions of Americans who view the justice system not as a blind arbiter of truth, but as a pliable instrument biased against them. His words were a validating confirmation of their deepest suspicions. Conversely, for the victims in the case and their vast network of advocates, it was a visceral, deeply personal insult that seemed to trivialize their trauma and reduce their suffering to a mere negotiating point in a high-stakes game among billionaires. The digital domino effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. The statement was surgically clipped from the interview, stripped of any surrounding context that might soften its edges, and launched into the stratosphere of social media like a scramjet. On X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, the engagement algorithms, finely tuned to controversy, seized upon the fragment and propelled it to the apex of every trending list. The reactions were a perfect case study in modern digital tribalism. "Why is Trump suddenly Diddy's character witness?" asked one viral post, accompanied by a meme of a confused-looking cartoon character. "Billionaire Brotherhood activated?" speculated another. The more creatively inclined denizens of the internet engaged in rapid-response satire, expertly splicing Trump's audio over footage of Diddy's solemn perp walk or somber courtroom sketches, creating a bizarre, dystopian alternate reality where the former president was a spectral commentator in the legal drama. But for those who had followed the sordid details of the case with grim determination, the survivors of exploitation, the dogged legal analysts, the journalists who had meticulously chronicled the harrowing testimonies, this was far more than a disposable viral soundbite. It was a spark thrown directly onto a tinderbox of simmering public anger. The very notion that a figure of Trump's immense stature and influence could look upon a case involving serious federal allegations of coercion, exploitation, and the abuse of power, and casually label the outcome, quite well, felt like a profound and callous dismissal of the victim's lived experiences. It reignited a white-hot fury that the sentencing had only partially and temporarily subdued. The mechanics of the comment's delivery were a textbook example of Trump's innate, if chaotic, media mastery. It was not announced from a rally podium, amplified by the roar of an adoring crowd. Instead, it was slipped, almost as an aside, into the flow of a broader conversation. This created a powerful veneer of spontaneity, making it feel like an unfiltered, off-the-record truth, accidentally captured on microphone, rather than a carefully prepared political statement. This perceived authenticity is a cornerstone of his appeal. The news media ecosystem, perpetually ravenous for Trump-related content that guarantees astronomical click-through rates and captive viewership, pounced with predictable vigor. CNN and MSNBC played the clip on a continuous loop, their panels of pundits and legal experts dissecting it with a mixture of performative outrage and forensic linguistic analysis. "This is a slap in the face to every victim of power and privilege," one commentator declared, their voice tight with anger. Meanwhile, on Fox News and other conservative-leaning outlets, the narrative frame was deftly shifted. The focus became one of Trump, exposing the system's inherent bias. Though whether that bias was perceived to be in Diddy's favor or against him was left intriguingly, and likely intentionally, ambiguous. This strategic ambiguity was the comment's greatest strength. It acted as a Rorschach test, allowing every faction across the political spectrum to project their own pre-existing beliefs and grievances onto it, thereby ensuring the debate would rage without any possibility of resolution or consensus. As the initial shockwave gave way to a sustained aftershock, the national conversation began to deepen, moving from the superficial, "what?" to the more profound and troubling, "why?" Why would Donald Trump, while enmeshed in his own labyrinthine legal battles and a grueling presidential campaign, choose to expend precious political capital commenting on the criminal sentencing of a hip-hop mogul? Political strategists and armchair analysts proposed a range of theories. Some saw it as a classic wag the dog distraction technique, a glittering, controversial object dangled before the media to divert attention from other, less favorable news cycles. Others interpreted it as a cynical, though brilliant, ploy for cultural relevance, an attempt to forcibly insert himself into the center of a massive pop culture moment, thereby capturing the attention and engagement of a younger, more diverse demographic that might otherwise be disinterested in his political messaging. However, the most chilling and persistent interpretation, one that gained significant traction across the ideological divide, was that Trump was merely articulating, in his characteristically blunt fashion, a worldview shared by a certain echelon of the global elite, that justice is not a sacred, blindfolded ideal, but a negotiable commodity, much like a real estate deal or a corporate merger. A viral TikTok creator perfectly encapsulated this sentiment in a video that amassed millions of views in a matter of hours, over a slow-motion clip of Trump delivering the fateful line. They superimposed stark, white text. "Power recognizes power." The caption was devastating in its simplicity. They don't see a criminal. They see a colleague who understood the assignment. This notion of a shared, rarefied class identity between Trump and Combs became the central, spinning axis around which the entire controversy orbited. Online forums like Reddit and Twitter transformed into digital coliseums, where users engaged in gladiatorial combat, dissecting the myriad parallels between the two men. Both were self-made billionaires who had constructed vast, multifaceted empires from humble beginnings, transforming their personal names into globally recognized, powerful brands. Both had navigated a lifetime of scandals, controversies, and legal entanglements, often emerging with their core power bases not just intact, but frequently strengthened. Both commanded fanatical, almost tribal loyalty from their followers, while simultaneously inspiring equally fervent and visceral contempt from their detractors. The compelling argument that emerged was that Trump's comment was not really about Sean Combs the individual, but about Diddy the symbol, a symbol of resilience, of beating the odds, and of mastering a system that both men consistently portrayed as their ultimate adversary. But while the digital chattering classes theorized about power dynamics and political strategy, the most acute and painful cost of the comment was being felt by those whose lives were directly touched by the case. Advocates for survivors of sexual assault and human trafficking expressed their fury and despair across social media platforms. One particularly powerful tweet, which garnered over 500,000 likes within a day, read, "He said it turned out well for Diddy? Try saying that to the women who lived through his abuse. Their sentence is for life." This raw, emotional response highlighted the vast and unbridgeable chasm between the abstract, bloodless political gamesmanship of Trump's remark and the visceral, life-altering human tragedy that lay at the very heart of the Diddy case. With a single sentence, Trump had, whether by design or collateral damage, brutally reopened a wound that had just begun to scar over, offering a stark reminder to survivors that their profound pain was often merely a backdrop, a plot point, in the high-stakes power plays of the elite. The controversy was then catapulted into a new, even more dangerous stratosphere with the emergence of a longer, previously unaired segment of the interview. In this extended clip, Trump did not merely offer a glib, surface-level assessment. He seemed to pull back the heavy velvet curtain on the hidden mechanics of power. "Look," he said, leaning forward with a conspiratorial, knowing expression that was instantly freeze-framed and analyzed. "Diddy's always been a businessman. They gave him a sentence, sure, but deals get made. People talk. That's how the world works." The phrase, "deals get made," instantly became the new, radioactive core of the scandal. It was a phrase dripping with dark implication, a heavy-handed suggestion that the official, public-facing judicial process, with its rules of evidence and procedural formality, was merely a theatrical facade. Behind this stage curtain, the argument went, the real, consequential negotiations of power and influence took place in hushed tones and shadowy rooms. To millions of listeners, It sounded less like a speculative opinion and more like a candid confession of how the world truly operates at its highest levels. Legal analysts and former federal prosecutors appeared on cable news programs, their faces etched with concern. When a former president of the United States uses language like deals get made in the context of a high-profile federal sentencing, one noted, his voice grave, it doesn't just comment on a case, it actively erodes the foundational public faith in the entire judicial institution. He is implicitly accusing the process of being corruptible, and in doing so, he contributes to that very corruption. This new revelation acted like pure oxygen on a raging fire. The hashtag deals get made exploded across every major social media platform, becoming a ubiquitous banner for everyone from political activists to concerned citizens. National survivor advocacy groups, recognizing the profound damage of the statement, release formal, scathing condemnations, calling the remarks a deeply insulting and damaging blow to every victim who has ever sought solace and accountability in a court of law. More dangerously, the comment provided a jet fuel injection to every simmering conspiracy theory surrounding the case. Were there clandestine negotiations between legal teams and powerful intermediaries? Was unseen political pressure applied to secure a more favorable outcome? While no credible evidence or reporting ever emerged to substantiate these shadowy claims, the mere suggestion, emanating from a former president, was sufficient to permanently stain the public's perception of the sentencing's legitimacy and fairness. The American media landscape, already a fragmented and polarized environment, became a dizzying hall of mirrors, each reflection amplifying and distorting the controversy. Cable news segments were dedicated solely to analyzing Trump's micro-expressions, his vocal cadence, and his body language in the clip. Late-night comedy shows, the modern-day court jesters, mined the situation for satirical gold, but their jokes carried a sharp, uncomfortable edge of genuine alarm. The national conversation had completely morphed in its fundamental nature. It was no longer a debate about the specific crimes of which Diddy was convicted, or the appropriateness of his sentence. It was now a sprawling, chaotic, national meta-debate about privilege, systemic corruption, the integrity of American institutions, and the very soul of the nation. Amid the deafening uproar, a poignant and haunting visual contrast emerged, one that would define the episode. On one side of this narrative was the stark image of Sean, Diddy, Combs, now stripped of his bespoke suits, diamond-studded watches, and the aura of invincibility, known in the sterile bureaucracy of the state as federal inmate, residing in a controlled, concrete cell at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. His empire was publicly crumbling, his freedom revoked, his legacy forever tarnished. On the other side was Donald Trump, moving freely across the country, holding rallies before thousands of cheering supporters, and from his position of continued, immense influence. Casually dissecting that same inmate's fate with an air of detached, almost whimsical amusement. The two men, once photographed together smiling at glamorous New York charity galas in the early 2000s, a time of unchecked ambition and burgeoning power, were now forever linked in this stark, cinematic dichotomy, one a fallen king staring at prison walls, the other a reigning kingmaker seemingly commenting on the aesthetics of the fall from a safe and powerful distance. The fallout, crucially, was not confined to the realm of rhetorical debate and digital outrage. Behind the scenes, sources close to Diddy's legal team reportedly expressed significant alarm and frustration. Trump's comments had effectively thrown a grenade into their carefully laid, meticulous plans for a quiet, procedural, and fact-based appeal. The case was now shrouded in a thick, inescapable cloud of political controversy and conspiratorial thinking, ensuring that every future legal filing, every judicial decision, would be subjected to intense, politically charged public scrutiny. This external noise had the potential to prejudice the environment and complicate their strategic calculations. It's like he threw a barrel of gasoline on a fire we were trying to systematically extinguish. One anonymous insider lamented to an investigative journalist. Yet, publicly, Diddy's camp maintained a stony, disciplined silence. To publicly engage with or rebut Trump's commentary would be to willingly step onto his preferred battlefield, a chaotic, media-driven arena where facts are often secondary to narrative, a dangerously unpredictable prospect for anyone, let alone a man fighting for the remainder of his future from within a prison cell. And through it all, the architect of the chaos, Donald Trump himself, remained characteristically and strategically silent on the matter. He offered no clarification, no retraction, no further explanation to contextualize his bombshell remarks. His silence was a powerful and deliberate tool. By refusing to engage further, he allowed the controversy to sustain itself organically, ensuring that his initial, provocative pronouncement remained the sole, immutable focal point of the discourse. He had set the narrative pendulum in motion with a powerful push, and now he could simply stand back and watch as the media, the political class, and the public swung wildly from one extreme to another, all the while keeping his name and his influence at the very center of the storm. In the final, sobering analysis, the profound and enduring impact of Trump's statement lay not in its factual accuracy, but in its brutal, unsettling honesty. He had, perhaps inadvertently, held up a cracked mirror to an uncomfortable truth that vast swathes of the American populace suspect in their bones but that few individuals operating at his level of power ever dare to articulate publicly, that there exists a rarefied, almost mythical stratum of society where the rules are inherently different, where consequences are negotiable, and where justice is often just another transaction in a vast portfolio of assets and liabilities. The story of Diddy's sentencing was thus permanently transformed. It was no longer just a tawdry true crime saga or a celebrity morality tale, it had become a dark, modern parable about the American system itself. Trump's 9-word verdict. It actually turned out quite well for him. And his subsequent, even more damning 3-word explanation, "Deals get made," would echo long after the headlines had faded and the news cycles had moved on, serving as a chilling, enduring reminder that in the shadowy, interconnected intersections of immense wealth, global fame, and raw political power, the fall is never as hard, and the landing is never as final, as it is for everyone else. The collision between Donald Trump's political machine and the Diddy case is more than a fleeting news cycle, it's a stark, unvarnished exposure of how power operates in the shadows, how justice can be perceived as a transactional commodity, and how a single, calculated comment can redefine a nation's conversation about fairness and accountability. This is the very heart of what we investigate here on The Killer Next Door: the unsettling systems, the unspoken relationships, and the dark mechanics that allow the powerful to navigate consequences in ways the average person can scarcely imagine. If this deep dive into the nexus of celebrity, politics, and justice has you questioning the very structures of power around you, then you understand why these difficult stories must be told. Here's how you can help us continue to pull back the curtain on the powerful. 1. First, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We have more shocking investigations into corruption, power, and crime coming, and in the next video, I'll be shouting out some of the names and locations you've left in the comments today. 2. Second, let this sink in and tell me your honest thoughts below. What's your take on this event? Was Trump exposing an uncomfortable truth, deliberately causing a distraction, or revealing something else entirely? Where do you see the line between justice and privilege in today's world? 3. And finally, share this video with someone who needs to see it. The more people who understand these complex dynamics, the harder it becomes for the powerful to operate without scrutiny and accountability. Thank you for watching, for engaging with these essential questions, and for being a crucial part of this growing community. Stay aware, Stay questioning, and remember, the most revealing stories are often hidden not in the crime itself, but in the comments of the powerful about the crime. I'll see you in the next investigation.